The league year starts tomorrow. Sure feels like it's starting now. Welcome into NFL Live. Glad you're here with us. Trey Wingo, Merrill Hodge, Teddy Bruschi. Herm Edwards will be with us in a minute, but the man who's literally breaking all the news and going back and forth and getting his aerobics and cardio in the studio, Adam Schefter, is with us. Adam, a lot to discuss. Let's start with Tony Romo. So they're going to release him tomorrow, not post-June 1.
Well, they can release him tomorrow and designate him a post-June 1 cap casualty, but they cannot do that until tomorrow. And if they do designate him the June 1st cap casualty, post-June 1, which I would expect, it would be $10.7 million against the Cowboys cap this year, $8.9 million against their cap next year. But the bottom line doesn't change. Tony Romo is going to be set free from Dallas on Thursday afternoon once the league year begins at 4 o'clock Eastern. He will become a free agent, just like Peyton Manning was a free agent. He will be able to visit teams, talk to new employers potentially, and make his decision. Now, he wants to go out and see other opportunities. He's played his entire career in one place, has never really spent time with other teams. This will be his opportunity to step back into the spotlight, to see what other organizations have to offer, to see which coaching staff he wants to work with, to see which offensive system he wants to play in. And, of course, we start, I think, with Denver and Houston. Okay, those are the two that, according to our Ed Werder, would have been at the top of Tony Romo's list. Also, Kansas City is there, but, again, that's a little sticky because they publicly stated that they're behind Alex Smith. And, it takes two to make the dance here, more or less. So with that in mind, of those two teams that have been discussed, now that we know Romo is going to be on the market, Teddy, is there one that you see as a better fit for Romo than the other? Well,
I think either way, I mean, if you can get a healthy Tony Romo,
that is the key.
You're getting a good player. I mean, this is a player that can do a lot of things for you from the quarterback position, extend a lot of plays, and if you can keep him healthy the entire year, I say you become a contender if you didn't have a quarterback in the past. So it sounds like Tony Romo wants to be courted somewhat. So hopefully organizations get this done before the draft, because a lot of questions, do we take a quarterback in the draft or do we make a strong play for Tony Romo? So Tony, strong, healthy, 16 games. I like what you got there. It's just a big if. We're talking billboard if here. IF if he's healthy the entire year.
Only started 4 games over the last 2 years, only played in 5. He'll be 37 next year. And you look at some of these teams. Denver obviously has issues on the offensive line. Houston has a much more stable offensive line. But he got hurt last preseason playing behind arguably the best line in football. Right. So knowing he'll be 37 next month and knowing what we've seen the last 2 years, what's a realistic expectation for him to be healthy?
Well, that's a massive risk. I think it's just Teddy just explained it very well. I think it's a huge risk. But I'm going to play onto a couple things that we said yesterday that
you're allowed.
I want to emphasize is that it's hard to start over. All the years and time Tony Romo has spent in Dallas, this transition is not going to be easy. Then play off what Ed mentioned, Shefty mentioned a second ago. Some team's going to appear and nobody's talking about. Right. Nobody's thinking about. Those things happen. I'm going to tell you this. As a player who was a free agent, the Chicago Bears came out of the blue for me. I was like, I never saw them. That doesn't even make sense because Ironhead Hayward, they had just signed the year before. So what I'm saying is there's a lot of teams that we can't even think about. They're probably sitting there going, this might work for us. And it's a scenario you can't even imagine.
But here's the thing you have to keep in mind also. Tony Romo gets to choose. And so Cleveland may be interested in Tony Romo. San Francisco may be interested in Tony Romo. Realistically, that interest is not going to be reciprocal because he's got a year or 2 or 3, whatever he's got left, a short window of time to try to go win a championship.
You're right.
And he's going to go to a place where he thinks he can win right away, which is why we come back to Denver and Houston.
Yeah, and here's a choice I think Tony needs to make. You need to choose to change your game because all of those highlight plays of him trying to extend plays, pirouetting in the pocket, staying alive and all that stuff, that has to end, all right? Because the longer you extend a play and last in the pocket, the more the defenders will converge and you'll get those hits. So him changing his game also, is that possible for him to stay healthy? It may be.
Yeah, well, and what's kind of interesting about that, he was trying to change his game and he still got hurt.
Well, he was trying it was just an awkward thing. He got hit from behind as he was sliding. It really was sort of a confluence of a million different weird things that happened with the back injury. Although Teddy's smirking, like, yeah, that's what's going to happen going forward. I feel it. I feel the vibe you're throwing out there. Look, he was going to make $24.7 million. That would have been the biggest cap hit in the entire NFL. And if Mike Glennon is potentially getting $15 million, what what does Tony Romo think he's worth, and where might those suitors be? For more on this, let's go to ESPN's Ed Werder, who has been in constant communication with the Romo camp over the last year and a half on this. Ed, what more can you tell us?
Well, I just got a text message from somebody close to Romo after this news broke, and they told me it has to be the Texans or the Broncos for his next team. And I think if we look at the two teams, I think it's harder for the Houston Texans to do the deal because essentially, you know, Bob McNair guaranteed Brock Osweiler $37 million when they signed him last year. And so GM Rick Smith is going to have to be willing to admit that they made a mistake and spent substantial cash on a player who can no longer be their quarterback if they sign Tony Romo. I think that the coaching staff there is willing to do that. I think they much prefer to have Tony Romo over Brock Osweiler, but it's a tough decision for the hierarchy in Houston. You look at the Denver Broncos, they can benefit in multiple ways. First of all, he could be a bridge player to Paxton Lynch, the player that John Elway invested a first-round pick in that really doesn't seem ready to begin his playing career in the NFL quite yet, and they could maybe trade Trevor Siemian for something of value, the guy who started most of the season last year and really lost his sponsor in the organization when Gary Kubiak retired as the head coach. So I think that's a quick look at the two teams. I think, you know, Houston will offer him a better offensive line. They're a team that's proven the ability with Lamar Miller now to run the football. And so I think Bill O'Brien will believe that he can offer Romo more in terms of ways to protect him from future injury.
Well, the offensive line, obviously, Ed, is a huge question with the Denver Broncos. But going back to the Texans for 1 second, financially, we just talked about Tony Romo was due $24.7 million. Mike Glennon's probably going to make $14 to $15 million. They've got $17+ million committed to Brock Osweiler this season already. Can financially the Texans make this work?
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be easy, obviously, and it would surprise me, quite honestly, if they were to sign Romo if Brock Osweiler stayed on the roster. But I do think that they can make it work if they want to badly enough, and if they view Romo as the player who can get them where they haven't been with the succession of bad quarterbacks. I mean, Bill O'Brien's done a pretty masterful job winning division titles without having an established quarterback. So, yeah, it's not going to be easy, and people will ask in Dallas, well, how can the Cowboys lose their franchise passing leader and get nothing in return if he's going to go start for a Super Bowl contender like Houston or Denver might be perceived? And I think it's age, it's injury history, and it's that nobody wanted to inherit the contract that Romo has. Now the teams can force Romo to negotiate on their terms a new deal that's likely to be, you know, less, I mean, something more than minimum base salary, but much less than the $14 million he's scheduled to make, and then he's going to have to earn the rest through performance on the field and, you know, maybe per game roster bonuses.
All right, Ed, thanks very much. So let's delve a little deeper into this. As promised, we have Herm Edwards on the show. Louis Riddick is also here with us. Guys, what do you make of the possible scenarios and fits for Tony Romo?
Louis, go right ahead. You and the general. Take it away.
No, this is the general here. But I'll tell you what, really, the teams that have already been talked about and already been mentioned as the front runners are the ones that just make the most sense. He's going to want to go where the table is set for him largely to go ahead and jump right in there and compete for titles. And that's really the Houston Texans and Denver Broncos. Everyone else is really just kind of running interference underneath here. I mean, those are the two teams he needs to go to. Those are the two teams that offer the best defenses, the best running games, as long as Denver would fix their offensive line, and just the best overall 53-man roster. The rest of the time, look, Tony would be wasting his time, and that's not to be disrespectful to the other teams going to those places.
Here's how you make the contract work even in Houston. Tony has not played, in essence, for 2 years. There's something called likely to be earned incentives. That means that any incentive that is based on past performance for the previous year does not count against the cap if it doesn't hit a certain level. He has no performance in the previous year. So you can give him a contract that carries with it gigantic numbers if you wanted to, based on performance levels, because the first pass he completes is probably not likely to be earned. It's a very low threshold. Secondly, you build in, because of the injury, you build in 53-man and 46-man roster bonuses, which do not count against the cap because he didn't earn them last year. So the contract is no problem for Houston. You can massage it so that it has no cap hit at all.
Houston sounds like the place where he would want to go. Obviously, as you guys noted, great defense. They have won the division. They need a quarterback of Tony Romo's stature. He doesn't have to leave, the big state of of Texas. Dark horse, San Francisco. Have a lot of money in cap. Got a new head coach, Kyle Shanahan. Just got themselves a receiver. Okay, it's a rebuilding process. I get it. That is probably not the likelihood where Tony Romo would want to go. In the fact that, hey, look, these teams not going to win real early. Be interesting if San Francisco just kind of throws their name in the hat and tries to recruit Tony Romo.
Other than the weather, I would not have ruled Buffalo out because for all the reasons that we just stated. Offensive line, running game,
no doubt.
Good defense, but now they're committed to Tyrod, so that's out.
I agree.
All right, guys, thanks very much. And Bill